Hi, folks, and welcome to Film Optimist, where we talk about all things film with a healthy dose of optimism. I'm your co-host, Seth Boyd.
I am Megan Tierney.
And by the time you hopefully listen to this, because we want you to listen to it the day it drops, it's still spooky season. And so we are still doing horror movies. And we are doing a classic that we teased last time, The Thing. We are, of course, doing the good version of The Thing, the best version of The Thing, John Carpenter's 1982. And here to help us with that, whose dulcet sounds you just heard, Jim Briggs, my friend and former coworker. Jim, welcome to the show.
Yeah, we have a studio audience clapping for
That's
me.
right.
Hi. Yeah.
I love that.
All right, quiet everybody.
Perfect.
No. Hey everybody. Jim here.
Hey, Jim.
Happy to guest. Friends with Seth. Just met Megan. Great gal. Happy to be
Yes.
here. Looking forward to our chat today. We are
Yeah.
doing the prequel. Oh wait, no, sorry. Really, we're not. Oh, all my notes are on the prequel. Shoot.
Oh my.
You guys should have.
Shit.
I'm kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
All
Funny
these
joke.
years we've talked about this movie. I thought you were talking
Yes.
about it. The good one.
Yeah, I did the
And wait.
fifth version.
There's a prequel. I'm lost.
There actually is, like, the latest version of it is a prequel, actually.
The 2011.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently the
my.
effects are terrible.
I can believe it.
I mean, I didn't feel the need to watch it. We've had, like, particularly Riley and Trenton have done much more work for this show than you and I normally do, Megan. And
our
but
guests are incredible.
yeah, I followed their lead and I actually read the novella that this is based off of, Who Goes
Oh
There.
my. Yes.
And it's really good. And
Yeah.
so, as you alluded, Jim, there is an earlier version of this from the 50s. And we're gonna get into the production a little bit of this, but John Carpenter actually was pretty reluctant to make this movie because he liked the original, but he was kind of talked into, like, well, rather than making a remake of that movie, make it a more faithful adaptation of the book, which is what he did. So I'm just gonna do the quick synopsis here. This is really fun winter horror movie. This is guys are abandoned. I'm not abandoned. So guys, a research facility in the middle of nowhere, Antarctica, becomes under assault basically by an alien creature that can imitate any other being, and like very effectively. Like, it can take the form of a dog, it can take the form of a human and act like that human. And so of course it becomes very quickly, well, which one of us is the thing? And it's a very grim, very bloody, very guts and fantastic effects.
You're telling me. Woo.
Yeah, paranoid horror movie. So, Jim, actually, if you don't mind, we're gonna start with Megan. Had you seen this movie before?
I had not, Seth.
Okay.
True film optimist fashion. I just had not seen. It's getting embarrassing at this point, but
No, this is actually that's good. That serves as a great voice. It's like the voice of someone who has freshly seen it versus a jaded horror fan who has seen it 1,000 times and is excited by nothing. You know,
I certainly knew of it, like from the poster. This is okay. This may be the most embarrassing part, but I thought this was an Abominable Snowman movie. So you'll imagine my you'll imagine my delight when I found that it is aliens, folks. So if you're like me,
after disappointment of not seeing enough aliens in Nope, how did this work for you?
Oh, perfectly, brilliantly. The blood, the forms. My God, can't wait to talk about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Glad to hear it. And Jim, you rewatched this for it. How did it hold up? Had it been quite a while since you've seen it?
It actually has been quite a while. I've seen it a couple of times, but the last time I saw it, gosh, it must have been 10 years ago on Netflix in the middle of the night. I'm like, no, it's been a while. And I that question is always strange to answer for me, because I think I might trick myself. I have to figure out, am I loving this movie on its own merits, or is it nostalgia, or is it because I'm just so in love with the elements and the music and the mood? Am I giving it a pass? That's always interesting. I can tell you this, Seth, Megan, that Goonies did not hold up. Like a movie from my childhood. I watched The Thing when I was a kid, watched it a bunch more times. Like, I remember watching the Goonies as a kid, and like I rented it with my wife, and like sometime in my 20s, I'm like, that's not as good as I remember. Not so with The Thing. I do a lot of bunny trails. We're just gonna have to deal with that. No, I think it does hold up, and I'm saying that because I think it holds up on its own merits. I really do seriously think that this is a classic. And I mean, obviously, when you look at the creature effects, or just really the practical effects in this movie, I mean, do some of them look probably a little old? Yes, but I think the effect of the effects is to shock you. And
Yeah.
boy howdy, they still like disturb me. And that's how I know this movie is effective. I'm certainly not a horror aficionado. I love horror films, but I'm one of those horror film guys that just isn't disturbed by much anymore. Like nothing really scares me. Some jump scares here and there, but a movie that truly like transcends. There's a couple of them, and The Thing is actually one of them. So I thought it was great. I watched it last night, and when it was done, I felt empty and hollow. That's how I know that it was a
John
great
Carpenter experience.
Yeah, it was just a great nihilistic Friday night movie for me.
Yeah.
It was
beautiful.
great.
Going back to your side note there, I actually have not seen The Goonies, but I'm glad to hear you say that, because there's a great podcast we're going to plug, not that we get anything from it, Films to Be Buried With. Brett Goldstein, who's an actor on he plays Roy Kent on Ted Lasso. He has guests on to talk about movies. He tells them, like, you're dead, tell us about your life through film. And he had Edgar Wright on there, and one of his questions is, what's a movie you loved that hasn't held up? And his answer was The Goonies.
Really?
Yeah. And Edgar Wright, is a big, one of the most prolific Tarantino level. Scorsese knows everything about every movie.
Yeah, he's a huge movie fan.
Yeah, and Goonies was his go-to. That movie's not as good as I thought it was. That movie's not as good as people my age think it is. So.
Yeah, like you remember it as fun. You remember it as you watched it when you were a kid, which is your imagination, joy. It certainly is funny. I mean, some of the jokes still work. But yeah, not to derail us into Goonies. Maybe we can do that in another show.
I'm kind of curious to watch it, honestly. But I'm glad to hear that I completely share your thoughts, Jim. And there's the effects they're much more extreme than I remembered. Like I remember it being really gory.
Goodness.
And because there's not a lot of actual blood, there's so much other weird, gooey, strange body stuff.
Wet.
Like you have it's a very wet movie.
Very
That's
wet.
a perfect word for it, Megan.
Slime. I don't know.
Yeah,
there's a lot of moist moments in this. Sorry.
The most
for those who don't like
this year.
Yes. Trigger word.
Yeah. But like it's certainly gross. It's intentionally gross in a horrifying but fun horror way. And I think the three of us here are probably enough film and horror nerds enough to know that's like a lot of that is bubblegum. I think that's in those articles, like a lot, like art.
I did not know that.
Okay, you didn't. So and that kind of maybe changes a little bit. Just like it's one of those like, all right, now I know how it's done. It's not quite as, or maybe it's more gross, But
it's remarkable. So you inspired me because you gave us a bunch of cool articles to read in preparation for this episode. And one of them I remember was, and I didn't quite remember this. I've done some research on this movie before, but not as much before last night. But I do know that there was a budget crunch. There was a serious budget crunch for this movie, and I think it did go over budget while they were shooting it. But they had to make a lot with not much. They had to make their dollar go a lot farther than maybe other movies did. And I think that it's just incredible that they managed to pull that off and make a movie with practical effects that we're still talking about. And it's from the early 80s.
Yeah.
Not exactly known for, wowing us. But yeah, you're right. I mean, but it really worked. I think what made the effects work was there were things that we didn't see before. I don't think we saw a whole lot of horror movies with the amount of tentacles. Just the sheer amount of tentacles in this movie coming out of objects is just enough to make you kind of go, wow, we're really focusing on tentacles today.
Right.
But they put a lot of things in that we didn't see before. And I think that's a key to really grabbing it on and really kind of holding their minds for a long time.
I think it is such a perfect I'm gonna go ahead and reference something that we've talked about previously on the podcast is John Campbell was the editor for Astounding Fiction for quite a while, and that's who wrote Who Goes There, what the book is, what the movie is based off of. And so like Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, Clarke, all these big sci-fi writers from like the 30s through the 60s, where this was their boss. And the advice he gave everybody was create a monster that thinks not like a human, but as well as a human. And that's really like the thing is like, what is it actually trying to do is unclear for I think a good amount of the movie. Like what's its goal, because it's now assumed a dog or maybe Clarke, or we don't really know who. well, what's its end game? Like what is it actually after, and how is it going to do this? And like, and not knowing how it works. And I don't really feel like we ever know what it truly looks like, because like, we have it always morphing or mid-morph or something. It's like, what does a static the thing actually look like?
Right.
And so it is so foreign and horrifying that and like you said, there's it's trying to, like, the dog scenes are pretty horrific, especially if you have dogs, so trigger warning there, folks. But like the scene where it is having those tentacles launch out, it's like, why is that the easiest way to absorb a dog? It's not arms. It's not doing things in a way that seems logical to us, to the point we don't really know what's happened at first. Megan, what are some of your thoughts on
Sure.
this grossness?
Oh, good word. I mean, that's what struck me too, is like coming into it. I think we're kind of in modern day, we're in a genre of horror that's very, at least from what I've seen, like pretty paranormal driven, meaning like ghosts, things going bump in the night, which I'm a fan of those. I really like them, and that's my intro to horror, so like they have like a special place in my heart, kind of. But I'm also like the practical effect queen, and I just like when you see it, you can't, it's nothing compares like to how practical effects look, so I will tout it like all day long. And this movie is so clear, like obviously practical effects, and I was trying to like say what it was, like I was like kept calling them puppets, kind of. I was like, those are the sickest like puppets I've ever seen, and like I just didn't know how to like call their form.
I'm fine to use the word puppet for our terms, because I also don't really know.
Well,
and even just figuring out how they rigged it, and like how the mechanics of it, both in like the filmmaking element of it, but in the movie as well, like I was struck by how these are very like biological creatures, and you're trying to understand the biology of the monster, essentially. And so just a really good like solid monster movie is, I think, something that is pretty long gone in this modern era. So to go back to it and see it, really, I personally thought very well done in these practical effects, was just like astounding, and very gross. I agree. Like surprisingly gross.
So Megan, thinking, obviously not knowing exactly what this movie was about, was there a major surprise to you in it, like style, scenes, anything like that?
It's a good question, Seth. Like something that I think I've seen, like because it's also a Stephen King adaptation, right?
No,
so like
it's on Campbell.
Oh my goodness, I had it wrong in my head, but I think like it kind of had that essence to me of it.
This is around the era where we started adapting King a lot, though, I think, and he's becoming prolific as an author, so we associate with the 80s. So.
Oh my god! Well, I think that's what was maybe in my mind about it, and like I think that even those adaptations, like they hold back, I would say, like on the reveal of the horrifying, maybe monster, horrifying ghost, whatever it is. And I liked in this one that it's quite early on that we see this thing like go nuts on either the dog or the one of the crew members.
Right.
And then it becomes it was just impressive that it kept like building on each other, of how many like iterations of this version of this creature that can happen, and it was all original and like all new. It wasn't the same thing. Like that was pretty impressive, and a pacing of a horror movie that I hadn't seen before, honestly, at all.
Yeah. Well, and Jim, a similar question, having not seen it in a while, was there something that you remember different or didn't remember, something that really struck you on this watch?
Oh man, there were I was surprised by how many things I either didn't remember or that I learned last night. I never honestly thought of this movie as a very complex movie. I don't think that's a bad thing.
Right.
But
that's a good point.
There's definitely some mystery in this movie, but I found more layers. I didn't remember that this creature, what you see of the creature, seems to be a very mindless it seems to have a very mindless goal. It's just operating on instinct, kind of like the xenomorphs in Alien. They really have only one purpose, which is to reproduce, and that is their only goal, and to protect that sacred act. And it was kind of like this mindless creature. I thought of the thing as that, but I don't think so. It does have a just like a survival instinct, that just survive at all costs. But I forgot that this creature had it. I mean, come on. the first scene is a spaceship crashing into the planet Earth. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right.
Yeah,
This
that
thing
surprised me too. I definitely forgot that.
had a very high intelligence, and
Right.
I also kind of missed that. I'm not quite sure about this, but you guys remember Blair, the
Yes, the glasses, blonde.
the glasses
Yeah.
guy. It's Wilford Brimley, the
Yes, thank you.
diabetes, that guy. When I think he turned, and he was literally building a flying saucer
Yeah,
in his
he
little
was.
cave.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he was building that as Blair or if he was building that when he turned.
No, that's a great point, because that's something that is unclear in the movie, and sorry to cut you off.
There was a
Jim.
lot
It's
of Blair. No, it's great. There's a lot of Blair stuff that I forgot. I forgot that Blair came back.
Yeah.
I thought he just vanished, and I loved that part of the movie. But anyways, all that to say, I forgot and kind of was pleasantly surprised that there is some intelligence to this creature that I didn't really notice before. And there was that and many other layers that I appreciated about this movie. And I wanted to hear Megan's thoughts on one of my favorite aspects of this movie, which was the opening scene where was it Swedish or Norwegian? I can't remember. Norwegian helicopter with the two guys shooting at the dog. When that was happening, and then they landed, and then the grenade went off, and then he went after this dog. You're not at that point. We don't really know exactly why this is happening, and I love that they did this. They don't care that you don't know what's going on. They're trying to kind of throw you off, and they're showing you something that is very key to the movie.
Yeah,
but we have no real interpretive lens to figure out what was going on. What were you thinking when during that opening scene? What was going through your mind?
I'll tell you, it was kind of a harder opening, I would say, for me to like jump into the movie.
This poor dog.
Well, and the brutalness of the dog. Oh my God, I could hardly take it. But like, just in terms of very, very not straightforward, right? Like, and I agree. Like, it's a huge pet peeve if the movie is just like, and then this and this happened, and in the past this happened, and blah blah blah, and like we don't really know why. I can't deal with it. I'd rather show not tell detail, and like what a perfect like show not tell detail. So I agree. Like I'm like the classic, very cinematic. You're along for the ride. Like just kind of pay attention, and it'll happen. I guess. But
you'll figure it out. Just pay attention. It'll be fine.
But the juxtaposition of that spaceship like landing into Earth was like quite jarring. I think that that effect was kind of funny.
Doing? Why is there a dog? There's a helicopter. Yes. What's going on?
Where's my snowman? Is the number one thing I thought.
Where's the Yeti?
With the Yeti. Yes, I think that's more what it was.
10 minutes to the end. I'm still not seeing a Yeti. Don't know.
Well, this is bullshit.
Yeah. Pleasantly surprised, like I said.
Glad to hear that. I think going back to that opening, like one thing that I forgot, or two things I forgot, was the pacing. Because you had this great, very intense intro, like what the fuck is happening? But it's actually quite a while before main crew starts to die off. It's like maybe 30 or 40 minutes where there's still debate about like, is there actually a danger? And as a first time viewer, like you make, I'm like, you don't know. Right. But also obviously I remember the score, Morricone's score. It was fantastic. I
forgot about that too.
Yeah, I only remember the
classical
opening
elements.
Yeah, and I forgot how much more of the score there was. For some reason, I remember for years thinking there's only one song in this movie, and that's just because it comes back the last like 15 or 20 minutes.
Sure,
but no, there's great score throughout the movie that we'll get into more, I think. But just the cinematography is stunning. And Dean Cundey, I believe I'm saying his name right, did the cinematography. He went on to do Jurassic Park. He did many other movies with.
I thought it had that essence a lot.
He did many other movies with John Carpenter, including Big Trouble in Little China. But like this is a great cinematography. He did Apollo 13. He's still working. He's still a great cinematographer. So like just that opening shot with the vast waste, vast emptiness.
It was on purpose, wasn't it? It was to show you that there is no help coming.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's why they showed it.
I think you're absolutely right. You said nihilist, I think, earlier, Jim. And this is a very overwhelmingly nihilist movie.
Oh yeah.
In a way that I really like. Well, let's get into that. And I just want to preface that with saying, like, So there's two, by the time this came out, this is the second version of the movie, and it was nearly 30 years apart, maybe more like 25.
Yeah.
But both movies took place during the Cold War, which did not exist, when the book was written in the 30s. But both movies, I think, have largely been seen as commentary on the Cold War. And we might lose a little bit of that now, but just the paranoia of everybody turning on each other. You can't trust your neighbor.
Right.
They might be a damn dirty commie, something like that. And I think Carpenter I don't actually became, but like some of his later movies are much more variably political, especially They Live. He was not a fan of Reagan. So I don't know how overtly political this movie actually is, but it certainly is a reading of it, especially with the nihilism of, the happy ending is presumably they actually killed a monster, but they're not going to live. It's just two guys are left and they're just going to freeze to death, and that's the good ending.
Yeah.
And that's the arguably generous interpretation of the ending. But Jim, take us away on nihilism.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know if John Carpenter would say it's a huge theme of the movie, but whether it was intentional or not, it certainly is. And the reason why I say that, and why I mean, does anyone truly like nihilism in movies? Is that something you should admit? I don't know, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. And I think I have a reason why. I know that this movie is on purpose kind of like a Lovecraftian type of approach.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was important to me because this was the first Lovecraftian cosmic horror, to the extent that it is, type of movie I ever saw. Like, I'm not sure there are heroes in this movie. If there are, they very much don't win. Even if they did, you're not allowed to see that they won. The creature, the evil presence, is unrelenting, and it's there's like a lot of cold indifference in the movie. There's really no hope in the movie. In fact, I would say there isn't any hope at all. And in fact, I think that the fact that there were two survivors left at the end, spoiler alert, is meaningless, because I picked up on something that we'll probably get into later in terms of, like, who really won in the end. We'll get into that later, but that Lovecraftian aspect where the creature is otherworldly. In fact, it's so transcendent that you can't even interpret the creature. You can't even interpret the evil force. Evil might not even mean anything to this creature, because there's absolutely nothing you can do in response to it. It is otherworldly. That's a Lovecraftian thing. Another Lovecraftian thing is the nihilism. I think H.P. Lovecraft, I think it's well established that there was no divinity in his world. It was just basically the cold indifference of nothingness, and there's really nothing you can do. And it's very well likely that your happy little life will be transformed by a giant monster that will make you go crazy if you look at it. That's just H.P. Lovecraft on a Saturday night, pretty much.
Right.
Yes.
And this was the first movie I ever saw that had that element to it, and I loved it, because I couldn't do anything to redeem any joy out of this movie. There was really just like, you're at the end, you just kind of go, well, I guess give a win to the bad guy, like a big one. Like the heroes kind of took their L's on this movie over and over and over again. It was unrelenting, and the John Carpenter, the writers, the filmmakers didn't care about you, and I love that. I absolutely love that. And ever since then, this movie started it for me. Ever since then, I've been attracted to the cosmic horror Lovecraftian genre. I absolutely, again, it feels weird to say that I love them, but I just love what they do. I love that there's the transcendent elements, the unrelenting horror, the unrelenting attack of the evil guy against the good guys, and the good guys never win. And it's not just like a change of pace, but I just love I love that effect on an audience, that effect on me as a viewer. I love it. And I think this movie very much well encapsulates that aspect. There's just really not a lot of hope, really, at all for these guys. It's cool to watch.
Fully agree with you, Jim. That was very well said. Yeah, it is a very hopeless movie. Let's talk about cast. Are you a Kurt Russell fan in general?
I am, very much so. The first Kurt Russell movie I think I ever saw was Big Trouble in Little China.
Also John Carpenter.
I'm going to do my best to not reference that movie.
You can?
It could very much turn into, when you guys actually post this episode, hopefully it won't say Big Trouble in Little China. Guest starring Jim Briggs. No, I was a huge fan. He was a different character in that movie.
Sure.
This movie, and there are no jokes in this movie as far as I could tell. There was like maybe half a joke towards the end in this movie, so it was a little different. You know, I don't think I'm not sure why they picked him. He did kind of have to stand in as a leader eventually, and he just had that confidence in what he was trying to do. He was probably the most resolute character in the whole movie, other than the Thing. And I think I saw that in it, but I really liked that, and I was pleasantly surprised by all the characters that you remember from movies in the 80s. There's actually a lot of them.
There's a lot of them.
Well,
I completely forgot Keith David is in this movie, and I love Keith David, and just recently saw him in Nope.
The voice of the army.
Yeah, that's right. So Megan, you and I talked about bodies from representation on our second episode in that essay. Everyone's beautiful, nobody's horny. This is kind of reminding me of one of the movies we were talking about longing for, where like Kurt Russell's a very handsome man, and he really does it for me in this movie. And
he is a sharp looking dude.
He's a very handsome man, but it also like they don't look like models standing next to everybody else. It looks like this crew makes sense. But in general, this is a group of normal looking guys with two particularly handsome men, or at least two men I'm particularly attracted to. But this really felt like these are normal dudes, you know? Yeah. And I really Brimley,
like the hottest.
Yes. You know, that's maybe one of the more frightening moments of the movie to me, is when Blair is going crazy with the axe. Because I think, and this really happens every time I've seen the movie, I remember having this feeling of like he looks like a kind of unassuming schlub. But it's like, oh no, this is a big guy. This is a big guy with an axe. This is a big guy with an axe who also a gun, who's not afraid to use it. This is a man multiple strong men are having trouble taking down.
This is the oatmeal guy. Come on, he's not supposed to do this.
Exactly.
It was kind of unnerving. I'm like, why is Wilford Brimley going crazy? Well, Jim, he's an actor. Let the guy do something different.
He does out of their roles.
You know, he does do other things. Like, okay, I guess I'll let him do this.
Oh, that's
are you not going to be able to eat oatmeal for a while after this?
You know, I don't know. I'm going to look at the consistency of the oatmeal and think of, this looks a little too gooey, and I'm unnerved by this. You know,
fair enough. I need some solid food.
Yeah, I need some solid aspects to this oatmeal.
But yeah, I think that's the thing I really liked about not just this movie, but this era of movies. And Carpenter was always good about that. Is like these look like normal dudes. These are not models. Like there's a lot of guys who are balding, or you know, these look like average guys in a way that we don't get with Marvel movies.
I agree, Seth.
And I like, on the note of economy of time and writing, I don't think we ever get what they're actually there for. Like, it's a research station that's researching Antarctica.
Oh my goodness, you're right.
What they're doing. Yeah. And like, I'm not exactly pins and needles what it's the research. You know, it doesn't matter. You know,
Must
and I don't
know
think
this.
Yeah, we know more about what the Norwegian station's doing, right? By the end of it. And I like that, because like it does not matter. It does not really change anything.
Yeah. Does it really bother you?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the isolation was the point, right?
Right.
It wasn't necessarily what they were doing. It's the fact that these guys are living off a generator. Right. They have the supplies that they have, or all that they have, because winter is coming. Yeah. It's 40 below, and there's a storm outside.
That's also horrifying too, right? Is that he says first fucking day of winter, first goddamn day of winter.
Yeah,
it's already Antarctica. So it's like, wait, this is better than what's about to happen? Yeah. You know, like, this weather is the nice weather.
Well, and what such an offbeat choice for and essentially a UFO movie, sort of. Like, I think that I like that it throws you off in so many ways. Even a horror or a monster movie, which I like, it kind of falls into the latter for me, is like a monster movie rather than typical UFO movie, sci-fi movie. So that's what's like, and also when are we going to see Antarctica in another horror movie? So like to see that was really profound. It was like, it's pretty amazing.
It's a great setting for a horror movie. Nothing will come and help you for miles and miles and miles. It's cold. The color scheme in this movie is there for a reason.
Right.
It's to make you feel bleak. It's just a perfect location for a horror movie when you think about it.
I just really love the fire and ice dynamic of all those flamethrowers. Like, they looked incredible, and like probably poetic, something poetic in there about fire, ice, all that good stuff. So I really liked that.
Well, there is certainly the irony of like this is a thing that could heat us up, but it can't. Like there's all this on fire. There's kerosene, and we're cold, but we can't just put our hands by the fire and be warm. We can't bottle this and bring it inside to be warm.
Yeah.
Ooh, and I think that's gotta drive you crazy. At least that would drive me crazy. I also like that they did not overcommit to things. Like they're definitely not always wearing as much snow gear as needed. Like I think pretty early in the movie when there's like the helicopter, the dog, Kurt Russell comes out like without even a jacket on, and it's like that's fine. We're in this heightened world that's being created. Like it's fine. These are great. I thought the clothes were great. I'm like learning more about the character, but going back to things that I kind of missed the first time, and my lovely wife Anne pointed out to me, it's like McGrady fucks up a lot. He's not swinging in to save the day. Like he's fooled pretty easily when somebody else thinks he's the thing and he gets left behind. Not all his ideas work initially, and
you're right.
Yeah, and I think that's really great too. And by the time this comes out, Hereditary will have been our last episode, Megan. That's another movie that I forgot how horrifying.
You guys did Hereditary?
We did Hereditary.
I can't wait.
One of the truly horrifying things about Hereditary is everything Toni Collette tries doesn't work. And there aren't clear rules in the thing, for any of these guys. Like no one here is the expert. It's not Jaws where we have Quint who knows about sharks. Nobody knows about the thing. And McGrady's a helicopter pilot who just looks really rugged. He's not even like the best shot. He's not the smartest doctor or whatever. He's one of, I think, 2 helicopter pilots, and seems to be the preferred one compared to the other guy. But very much a reluctant hero who largely has to figure it out because he's the accused for a lot of the movie. And I think that's another level. We're gonna dunk on, I think, superhero movies again. That's another thing that's a lot more fun, right? It's a lot more fun to see people truly figuring shit out, not because we have the expert doctor here, because Superman's here, but out of absolute necessity.
I just feel like their incompetence leads also or enhances for me the horror element too, because it's like, well, shit, we're gonna die, and like we gotta
let's pull out the manual on how to deal with a thing that shapeshifts.
And it is realistic by the end of it that, well, maybe you're right, Jim, like maybe not even that the 2 men were left. Like it's almost like it helps me in like scaling the creature as well, and like seeing how deadly this thing is, how humans can actually react to it, and like if this is gonna work or not, like if we will get out of this. And I think that that aspect of nihilism I really liked in the movie, that it was like realistic and relative to actual human experience, other than like than a Marvel, which is just really hard to comprehend, I guess, on that big of a scale. But this is like you get it, and you get the horror element of it.
And I think all the things we've been talking about the last like whatever period of time here also really make the effects work better, because this movie doesn't solely rely on effects for horror. So much of the horror is the isolation. It's nobody's coming. It's you can't trust anybody now. I think I completely forgot that Clark was still a human. That was another big like shock. Because Blair says watch out for Clark because he's around the dogs, and the thing is first a dog. And he never turned. Blair did. And like that's maybe the bleakest moment of the movie. I'm like, and the hero shoots Clark. Kurt Russell shoots the nice man who just wants to take care of his dogs. Shoots him in the head.
Split second, and he's gone.
Yeah. Right. And that's our hero, and this movie, I forgot how much of an anti-hero Kurt Russell is in this movie too. Because
you're right.
Because I just remember him being rugged, manly man.
I think you were struck by the handsomeness.
Yes, you call him. Yeah, that was also. So I read the book I mentioned. The thing that really stuck out to me the most was how much John Campbell talks about how hot McGrady is. And I looked it up, and Campbell, to my knowledge, there's nothing written about how he was homosexual or bisexual, but it is repeated multiple times that he's like this bronze god of a man. Bronze is used to describe him, and how handsome and how rugged his voice is come up a lot more than a straight author would typically write. So great casting with Kurt Russell. Not exactly bronze, but
I was gonna say, I don't know if bronze is quite more
of Greek or Italian man or something.
Quite the right adjective.
Yeah.
So there were some aspects of 80s masculinity that worked.
Yes.
You know, not all of it was attractive.
Right. But yeah, like a truly grim movie that I'm personally having a lot of fun watching though. I think because the effects are so shocking and
it's so cool.
They are so cool. And we get these great precursors of it where they find, like, for lack of a better word, a corpse, they think, and they don't know what it is, but in it are like multiple organs and like morphed two human faces that appear to be in pain.
You know what I didn't quite realize at first was, I mean, when you're even if you watch the thing for the first time, you know you're gonna see some pretty weird, crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And when it happens, you're like, yeah, that's pretty wild. But what I didn't think that when you remember the first time these guys saw their first crazy corpse, and it was the one you'll remember with the two faces.
Yeah.
It's like a Hellraiser kind of thing. And they're all sitting looking at it. It's on like an autopsy table, and they're all staring at it. And I just thought, my goodness, these guys have no clue that they were about to see this thing. Now they're looking at it, and you can see it in their faces. They're just like, okay, something's happening right now. I can't interpret this. I have no frame of reference to it. And it's like, okay, now like true horror is coming, because these guys have no plan. There's nothing they could do to really deal with what's in front of them. And I'm thinking, like, you know what? I have to like think about these characters as not me. You know, these are normal guys playing poker, watching TV, drinking, having fun. And now they're seeing this thing with two heads on it. Like, how would you react? I would be I'm like, I don't think I could handle it.
Yeah.
I couldn't handle it. And I don't think they could either. They're stumbled through this movie to the end.
They did, absolutely. And the silence in that scene is really penetrating.
It's crazy. Nobody
has anything intelligent to say, because it's
I loved it. It was great.
I like the stoicism too. And that was another thing that struck me, is like, because we see the creature so early on, or like this crazy thing, and their reaction is kind of, it's not over the top, and it's also like, okay, what do we do? Like, they have to kind of plan it out, the rest, how they're going to survive or how they're going to deal with this thing. And I think that's just so different than like constantly running away from this thing, or like just, you know, being very, very over the top about it. Like, I like that it was also, it felt true to the research element of like, okay, like we have to do this and this, like, how are we just going to get through this? And they kind of do that throughout. Like, it changes obviously, like through their perils and plights, but that they take the time to kind of like assess what to do is even a luxury almost now. And especially maybe even like in a modern monster movie or something like that. So
that's a really good point.
I really liked that.
Well, there's a lot of action, there's a lot of gore. Like, you're definitely not disappointed by the end. You don't like, by the end of this movie, you don't feel like it wasn't scary, but there's a lot of quiet, nothing seems to be happening. You know, there's a lot of just people being like, you see the boredom of being in Antarctica is pretty well established, I think, in the isolation.
Yeah. I'm curious, for both of you, what was your favorite monster moment? Maybe not like the creature effect moment, but just like, what's your favorite scene or moment that had the thing in it? As like, just like you took it away, like, man, this just freaking worked. You know, John Carpenter's great.
Yeah.
This movie, I will remember this movie for this moment. And I'm just curious what it is for you both.
Megan, do you want to go first?
I think I have mine, because something I hadn't thought about that, but something like struck me as soon as you said that, Jim, is the lying on the table claw one that kind of grabs at the guy.
Goodness,
that was
great.
That was towards
Isn't
the
that
end.
wild?
So that, I think that was my favorite puppet. I don't know if that's the right
lovely
word.
Puppet.
I love that puppet.
Kermit really nailed it. You know?
Yeah,
he really stretched himself to capture that role of.
Kermit went crazy. The Muppet went crazy. But that one was, it almost felt a little like Tim Burton-y, like almost, or
with the teeth.
What's the one? Beetlejuice, like Beetlejuicy. It had that, like, it was like I was gonna say also, like, my favorite thing is like, it's almost campy, but no, it's not. Like, I think it, like, the size and scale of it all really works.
You weren't expecting it. That guy, he was just like a good guy. This poor guy having a heart attack.
Yeah.
And then he's on this, they're trying to save him. I don't think you would expect that thing to happen.
I certainly forgot about that because I just thought I was mixing up with Alien, like the chest burster scene. And I think on the rewatch, that's one of the things I really love about that, because like Alien has that famous John Hurt thing burst out, and this came out 3 years later and has a similar scene that is probably, I think it's just as good. I don't know if it's better, but it is just as shocking, even though a chest burster thing has already happened. It's just as unexpected, and the effects are great, and it's happens to the last person you expect it to. So I think that really worked.
I think for me too,
it's also really
scale.
Yeah, Megan, I was kind of really torn between that scene you just mentioned and the when he's doing the blood test, and it's starting to look like maybe this is bullshit and it's not going to work. And then finally, one of them is one that drops of blood is actually a creature. That was.
You know what I did last night when I watched it? When he did the ones after that, I was just like, like, is it going to explode on him? Like, that's what I would be doing. I'd be like, from a distance, like,
Well, even the blood, like, I was like, okay, I thought that it would like separate, or I don't know.
Forgot what happened.
What happened? Like, I just didn't expect the immediate like burst, I guess. So that was good. That was really awesome.
Yeah, just like that sequence where, like, I think part of the terror was for me, and going back to their incompetence, we don't have a whole lot of reasons to think Kurt Russell is going to be right with this blood test. Because like this is already like they tried to do a former blood test and the thing destroyed all the blood, their sample blood for donors later. And for audience, this is where he's talking about thinking that each basically cell or drop or like that a thing is made up of a lot of independent entities that will fight to protect itself. And so his idea is if I take a little bit of blood from everybody and if I harm it with his flamethrower, it'll defend itself. And it's, after he tests the blood for like 6 or maybe more people, everyone's saying this is bullshit, because everyone is tied up except for himself and I think Window, who has, they have 2 flamethrowers on him, on everybody. It is starting to look like this is bullshit. Like you're just making this up. You're just this tyrant. And then a droplet of blood does actually form into something. And I think that the pacing of it is enough for the audience to also doubt if this is going to work. And Russell Crowe is clearly doubting as McGrady if this is going to work.
You mean, and then Kurt Russell?
Oh my God, yes, Kurt Russell, thank you. Kurt Russell is doubting if this is going to work. And then it does form into a monster, and then his flamethrower jams, and the other guy is supposed to go and kill it, but he's not Kurt Russell, and he's horrified. He's facing this, Lovecraftian Cthulhu creature from the other world.
What do you do?
But no, I think that was maybe the most haunting creature scene for me. What about you?
I like that. John? Oh man, this movie I will forever remember is even one of actually my favorite horror moments was when, I cannot remember the character's name, but do you remember it was actually one of the first human deaths that we saw? But he was balding, had red hair, red beard.
Yes. I thought he looked like a off-brand Richard Dreyfuss, but I just liked him more than Richard Dreyfuss.
Yeah. And we actually saw the creature actually changing him, which is very disturbing. I don't think we really saw a scene where a human was in transition to the thing, but it was just bloody unnerving. And he escapes, right? He runs out, and everyone notices, okay, this guy is not. He's clearly transitioning into the alien. He's running outside. We all need to go and take care of this. And it's kind of dark. And they all surround this guy, this thing. And he's on his knees. You can see his hands are still like tentacles.
Yeah.
They all surround him and they say something to him. And he just kind of looks up with his mouth really wide open. His eyes are bulging. And out comes this unbelievably horrific otherworldly noise, and he just kind of roars at these guys. And brother, that's horror. Okay. That was like when I watched that, even last night, I was just like, this movie is awesome. Because to this day that scene still affects me. And it's also a testament to how sound can be an underrated element in a movie.
Absolutely.
Not that you film people know this already, but effects are one thing. Scenes, production design can be very effective, but you know what? At the end of the day, sometimes sound can just take you out of your comfort zone, and can tell you, yeah, there's something going on in this scene right now. This character is gonna kill you. This thing is probably going to win. There's not a lot you can do. And oh, by the way, it's an alien. Here's why. And just out comes this noise from this guy. And you're just like, okay, yeah, this is a pretty chilling effect.
Yeah.
And it's just my favorite part of the movie. It's my favorite scene. It's just like, man, this is why I love The Thing. It's because of what this guy does. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely. And I fully agree with sound. We talked about sound a bit with our Mulholland Drive episode, Megan. But that's what makes every Lynch movie a Lynch movie. Is the sound design is insane.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
humans don't like weird sounds. We hate
Star Wars isn't Star Wars without the sound design.
Yeah, you're right.
Like, and if you've seen that documentaries, that's crazy. I think that's like the laser bolts are like some of the creaking is just like a particularly like 1970s Oldsmobile door opening or something.
Yeah.
And like someone's out there recording it, or it's like banging on like a cable.
Yeah.
And like that is going back to production. Like that is amazing to me that people figured out that's how we're gonna do this, and we're gonna record it and we're putting it in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, that is so fucking cool.
I know.
Again, think about the teams that make this movie. Yeah, the sound design in this movie is fantastic and such a great way to make a horror movie to the next level. I think.
I feel like it was so good at the whole movie was good at trimming the fat where needed, but because like it went back to simplicity for me, but then we had these crazy insane creatures, these perfect like sound cues, stuff like that. So that's like the perfect puzzle like to making it an effective horror movie, I think, and like a scalable one, like one that you can is very, very like tangible. You can feel the horror elements. I love that element too. And it's very distinct. Like it comes out in these like, for me, like older 80s movies, sometimes 90s movies and stuff like that, and where I think they know that the horror elements or they're very aware of like what they're doing and the horror elements that are in there, which I love. I think it's just very like self-assured genre. Like they just know they know that this is the money shot, if you will.
Yeah. And we talked quite a bit about practical effects, and just like we've alluded to, the newer version famously is bad, largely because it doesn't have any great practical effects. It's like we didn't forget how to do practical effects. Like people are still alive doing this, like they still exist. There's just a really
the balls they had to do that.
That's also true. Yeah,
I mean, just making a prequel to a classic that is known for its practical effects, and you go ahead and put 20 million into VFX on this. I mean, I get it, but it's just, man, that's such a turnoff.
Like,
I don't think it hurt it, but I have, and it has one redeeming thing about it, which we can talk about later. But
I'm happy to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, the biggest complaint I have against that movie is not the effects.
Oh, okay.
And not about really the movie. It's that the first scene in The Thing, that mystery, this is why I asked Megan about it. Like, what were you thinking when you were seeing this inexplicable sequence of events? It doesn't make much sense. And I've always loved throughout the years that I never really quite knew what was going on, like where those guys came from. I know they explored it in the movie. Right. I mean, I know we get to some degree, we know that there was another crew somewhere that lost to The Thing, and The Thing won, just moved on to a different camp. But I don't want to know for sure. I want to think about it throughout the years. I want to question. I want to speculate. And they just kind of filled in the gap there. I don't think that takes away from the power of The Thing. So, but anyways, I read that some critics postulated that one of the themes of The Thing was an indictment against masculinity. And I am not really a fan of critics kind of imposing ideas onto a movie because just they need something to do. Right. And I don't know if this is good or bad about me, but I very much care about authorial intent. I want to know what John Carpenter wanted to do with this movie. I don't really care too much. But that being said, I read something last night that I thought that I'm still thinking about that was actually kind of impactful. It said it was basically an indictment against men trying to solve a problem. And one of the reasons why they might have lost is because they didn't have a woman helping them interpret or a feminine kind of a feminine quality to help them determine. Because one of the only thing I like in the prequel was that at the end, I don't know if either of you two seen it,
I
but
have
basically,
not seen it, no.
I have not seen
at the end, it was similar elements. They didn't quite know who was the thing. There was two of the main characters were alive at the end. One of them was the thing, was doing his best to not indicate that he was the thing, and the female character absolutely nailed that this guy was a fraud. Completely figured it out.
Right.
And this critic kind of said, well, that was actually that was completely missing in the thing, because it was just a bunch of dumb bearded men who couldn't figure out what was going on in front of them. They just chose violence. The first step they had when they encountered the thing was get the flamethrower,
right.
which, you know, I'm not saying was a bad move. Certainly was effective. But I actually kind of thought, you know, maybe they could have been served a little bit better with the paranoia by having some outside influence, something that led with empathy and could think things through without just going for the flamethrower. Because they really struggled with figuring out who was, if it was right or who was the thing and who was not the thing. And, you know, is that true? Maybe. I don't think John Carpenter was seeking to make a movie that was an indictment against 80s masculinity. I don't know, but it's still kind of something interesting to think about, you know?
No, I really like that. And I agree with what you're saying, Jim, because I think authorial intent is very important, especially when we're talking about on a tour, which John Carpenter is. Like, John Carpenter is not a hack who made a movie and didn't think about themes. You know, he's one of the greatest.
There are layers to this movie.
There's a lot of layers to this movie. I think sometimes, conversely, critics will think they found something that was always there. Like, I remember there was a headline that was like, oh, Martin Scorsese explores toxic masculinity in his new films. Like, what are you talking about? Every Martin Scorsese movie is about toxic masculinity. Like, Travis Bickle's not a cool guy. These are always, he's been doing this since 1967 or something. Like, that's always been there, and a lot of critics, you know, dunked on this person. But I'm thinking with Carpenter, like, he's had great female characters, you know. He's not a one-trick pony who can only do men. Like, Jamie Lee Curtis is great Halloween, you know, and he, of course, wrote and directed that. So it's like, I think he definitely can understand. I think that is part of the boredom, for lack of a better term, of this, is that it's just a bunch of middle-aged guys, you know. Here there's nobody has a partner, presumably everybody's straight. I do kind of wonder if that's the thing Carpenter had in mind. I wouldn't put it past him to have these are definitely guys choosing violence without anything else. And maybe no one is saying, wait, let's take a time out here. Even like
there may be some other tells that we could think of.
Right.
So that's an interesting thought. Megan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, again, like, for me, the one that we watch works so well because it's like I think I said it before, but like their incompetence leads to at least like getting the grasp of what this creature can do, kind of, and what it just feels very realistic to me. So it's kind of like, I'm not craving that female presence, if you will, like
Megan, would you get the flamethrower?
As a woman, how would you deal with the thing?
Yeah, would you choose violence here?
You know, and then like, but it's such cool, like torch it, the way they say it all the time. Like that's like kind of fun. So I think that it's
let's get rid of the guess the game and burn everything.
And I think again, like the fire looks just awesome. Like, I don't know, there's I like that it's a critique that the critic came up with, because it is very like, well, which came first, chicken or the egg kind of situation, and you can inject anything into anything, really. So it's just like, I don't really particularly know. So, but it wasn't like I didn't see a downfall in the 82 version of the thing at all, in terms of like something like that. Or
I will say, Kurt, sorry if I'm cutting you off. Like, Kurt Russell's a radically different male 80s hero than other 80s heroes in this movie and in John Carpenter movies. Remember, I read recently John Carpenter talked about casting Roddy Piper in They Live. And one, he's friends with Roddy Piper, and two, is like, I didn't want to have fucking Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone. And he basically said, I don't want to have Republicans in the movie. Because, again, going back to politics for him, but like, he really didn't want to have someone who was as famously ripped and was always solving things and was a recognized 80s action movie star. He wanted to have somebody who was a little bit more bumbling into this in that movie. Who's still, like, Roddy Piper was a wrestler. You know, he's still a physically imposing guy. So I think that certainly was a thing in that movie. He was conscious of what a action male hero looked like and how that formula was in Hollywood at the time, and he consciously chose not to do it. And I think, we've talked about what an anti-hero Kurt Russell is like. Yeah, he certainly is not. And I'll be honest, I'm pretty happy seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone in movies. Like Rocky's great. I'm not going to say it's not. It's a fun movie. Yeah. I'm pretty happy watching Predator, but like, yeah, this is a different guy. This is a really different thing that is, I think in some ways made in response to those. So I think the critique of toxic masculinity or just men in general is probably not too far off of what was on his mind.
Yeah. Just to kind of put a bow on this was an intriguing idea. And I do want to give some credit to some critics when they impose after the fact some ideas onto movies that maybe they were there, but I have limited interpretive energy and I want to direct it towards but after seeing this movie last night, I realized that I don't think there was really any way for us to win. I think because and I heard it last night and I'm thinking, how did I miss this? Kurt Russell even said it. All this thing has to do is just go freeze to death out in the ice and wait for the rescue party, which was like, oh my goodness, he's right. That's all this thing has to do.
Yeah.
It's already millions of years old. All it has to do is just wait for something to thaw it and it has another shot. So really, it doesn't matter what they do. At that point, they didn't know how many things were out there. And they just chose to try and burn everything. But I mean, really, there was very little likelihood that no matter if there was women, men, anything, no matter what we threw at this thing, it was probably 99% has a chance to survive. And that's the thing I think I realized last night, that I tried to figure out a way if this thing could lose. And it was highly unlikely that it was. So that's the point of the movie.
Yeah. I don't think there's a silver bullet that comes out at the end, which it wasn't like, oh, if only you guys had done this. I don't know. That doesn't exist for this movie.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
All that exists is two guys at the end just resigning to their fate.
That's the thing I like too, because like they at the beginning of the movie, it's Keith David and Kurt Russell, who seem to be a lot friendlier at the beginning of the movie, but do turn on each other pretty quickly once shit hits the fan. But in the last, it's two kind of buddies reconnecting, kind of before they
know they lost.
Best case scenario, yeah, exactly.
They know they're gonna freeze to death.
How do you like the last line to the thing from Kurt Russell?
Boy, I'm probably gonna have to pace myself here, but that ending. I love the fact that people are still talking about this ending, and I love that. I really am glad that there was no finality or resolution that Carpenter gave us. I think that would have diminished the power of the movie. I like the fact that there are fan theories about the ending of this movie, and I am no fan. Probably similar to what I mentioned before, I have limited interpretive ability. I need to focus on what the creators wanted and spend my time figuring out what. I'm not a fan of fan theories, but you know what? There is one that I really like about the.
I'm not gonna lie, folks. This is among the reasons why Jim is on the podcast. Is
you the first thing? Yeah, like
this is one of our first conversations. I think I might have had a thing. I still have the poster, but like my wife bought a really cool fan art poster of the thing, and I think I have this like visible one of our first.
We just started talking about it, and it was okay. So you guys remember when the show Lost came out?
Yeah,
all those years ago. A very speculative show. Invited a lot of fan theories because just no one knew what was going on. Just really
including the
writers.
People.
No one knew what was going on until the last season, where they go, okay, let's just figure this thing out. And a lot of fan theories started coming out. I'm thinking, okay, there might be something to this. I like that they were trying to figure this show. It's kind of fun. Fan theories are fun.
Yeah,
but it quickly got old for me. Fan theories to me I don't invest a lot of time into them because I don't want to know what some schlub says on a podcast.
Right.
Here I am, a schlub on a podcast. You shouldn't listen to me. I support that. But there was this one fan theory that I heard about who might have been the alien, the thing of the two. Because you're invited to think. You don't know if Childs has changed.
Childs was missing for quite a while.
He was.
No one saw him.
And there was some time spent between the cut. Because Russell had some different clothes on. He had a bottle of whiskey in his hand. He could have changed too. In fact, he could have turned a while ago. You don't really know, and you're left not knowing. So someone said that they're convinced that Childs had turned. And they gave a couple of clues as to why. He was gone for a bit. He came stumbling in. He sat down. And Russell had a plan, according to this fan theory. The plan was that in that bottle of whiskey was not whiskey. It was gas or fuel, like diesel fuel or something. And he was going to use this for some purpose. And Childs sat down. And Russell never took a sip of the bottle of whiskey. They talked through it, gave Childs the bottle. Childs drank it, put the bottle down. And you know what McCready's character did?
What?
He kind of smirked. He laughed. I saw it last night. It's like, the music, the synth bed started when Child took a drink. And Kurt Russell smirked. And that was the tell. That Childs didn't react to drinking fuel because he was an alien. The alien, his only purpose is to blend in.
Right.
And try and survive and survive and survive. Yeah. And I'm thinking, hot dang, that is a fan theory.
Yeah, that's pretty compelling.
I really like that. And I'm no fan of fan theories. And this one really worked for me. So all these years I'm thinking that's entirely possible. But you know what? That being said, I saw another video last night that said that McCready turned. And you know, it kind of made sense.
Because his smirk at the end did make me think he was the alien.
It could work that way. And you know what? I don't really want the smoking guns. I want J.J. Abrams' magic box here. You know, I want to continue to figure this out. But that being said, this whole time I look at Childs and I go, "You sly dog, you."
You told that so beautifully, Jim. I was pretty convinced because I was like, I was on for the ride for that one.
The bed, the smirk. I mean, come on, there's got to be something. That smirk means something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means.
I do remember reading that John Carpenter intentionally wanted the ending to be ambiguous. He actually shot a more clear-cut ending and was very happy to not have to use it. We should talk real quick about Carpenter a little bit, if that's okay, in this movie. Unfortunately, this movie was a pretty big bomb and really set back his career. Some of his were, but his movies were often made very cheap. Like even The Fog didn't get great critical acclaim, but it was made for $1 million and it made 20 back in America alone. And he doesn't even really like The Fog. I like The Fog, and it's California. But so it's like this is a movie that he was kind of I think understandably bitter about for a while, but now has since warmed up to. He kind of, I think Guillermo del Toro talks about getting dinner from years ago and be like, yeah, people come around, they like the thing now. It's like, well, what fucking good does that give me now? Like it bombed.
Would have been great for it to be.
Turmoil.
Who can win when they release an alien movie 2 weeks after E.T.?
Yes,
that's
a runaway.
That was the big thing here. Was
E.T. made us cry. The Thing made us cry in a different way.
It made us shit our pants. So this was definitely, and this was like a movie he was kind of talked into doing by the studio, and critics were really cruel about it. Just like, it's just a gross, mean
B movie at best.
Funny.
Which like, and now it's politically acclaimed as like probably one of the best horror movies of all time from one of the best horror directors. I don't know what it is, directors, and like he's received a lot of acclaim. This movie's greatly been reevaluated, but it was actually a real kind of stumbling block in his career, which is so strange to think about. Yeah, it's
one of the greatest atmospheric movies I've ever seen.
And it's probably
not a lot of movies.
John Carpenter, and I love John Carpenter.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. I think it's just it's sad and cool at the same time that that people grew to appreciate. John Carpenter. I guess retrospect is sometimes the best time to really get your wins in. Because people kind of things change. People's
no pun intended.
That was funny. That was great.
That's what we're here for.
I think people interpret movies differently over time. And maybe at the time it was just not ready. People weren't ready to kind of appreciate what was happening. And now that we have all the Saw movies,
right?
That's our horror. Not. I mean, it's a little. They're not popular anymore. But the horror movies we have
that was
now.
A big thing for a while. Yeah.
It's just it's not really cool. And then maybe let's go back to some other movies that maybe do these elements a little bit better. The Thing, The Exorcist, the original Alien. Aliens 2, in my opinion, is still
I love both movies. Yeah,
unbelievably great.
Yes.
Anyways,
I was gonna say, like, I agree with you, Jim. Like, it's also just, if we're talking about E.T. at this time, it's like it's not a Spielberg, like, so clearly not. But I don't know. That's crazy because it is so tight of it as what it is that it's so silly that if critics were like, well, it's not like it's not producing, like, or it's just like not what all these other, it's not Spielberg, so no. and I think now having like a longer filmic journey, genre, and repertoire, people are like, well, actually that was pretty fucking good. So
well, I was gonna say, I know for quite a while I thought all of these 70s 80s horror movies were schlock. Like and most of them aren't. Well, exactly, it's not fair. No, I should say most of them. Like most of the ones we talk about for a reason. Like what's the Friday the 13th is fine. It's not that great, but like Halloween's amazing. The Thing is amazing. Even like the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is fantastic. Like these aren't just good horror movies. These are good movies. And the Thing is really interesting because like this and The Fly, Cronenberg's, are remakes that are probably better than the original, but are both, among the most unique, frequently referenced horror movies. And it really worked in a way that maybe people were precious about this being a remake when it came out. I don't really know, but it's like there's been so many horrible remakes, including the prequel, basically kind of a remake of The Thing. There's been, I think, 3 other new versions of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like we're kind of I think there was one from last year. Every now and then they'll remake one of these great movies. And it's wild to me to think not only were these older movies better, but like older remakes were better. Like I think it's the 70s or early 80s version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers is considered the best one. Like you have this era, particularly late 70s, 80s, where they were remaking horror movies and they were great. And it seems to be an isolated incident that maybe ended after The Fly. But
they rebooted Night of the Living Dead in the 80s. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, I think it might have been early 90s, but they tried to do a different retelling of it. And
because that movie was a lot better than I expected to be. The original was like, that's a very competent, well-made movie.
Yeah.
And I think, folks, if you're like I was, of just seeing all this horror movies, just kind of gory mess that doesn't say anything. Firstly, that's not true. A lot of these movies, like Night of the Living Dead, is a very political movie too. That's very much about civil rights. It's about racism in America. A lot of these movies have that. There's a lot written about how Texas Chainsaw Massacre is about Vietnam, but you also don't need that. If you just want to watch a competently well-made horror movie that's truly scary, and also if you want to learn how to make a movie, watch some of these movies. These are movies punch above their weight limit more than a horror movie made on the cheap. Like Halloween was made so dirt cheap. All these movies are made in like a week in their film schools.
Blair Witch Project made
that's a great.
Could anybody make a movie for 30 grand that grosses $200 million?
Exactly. That's crazy. Horror right after porn has always been the most profitable genre.
It was a $40 billion industry, probably a lot more now.
Yeah. And so I highly encourage any of our listeners who are interested in movies in general, want to make movies, like watch a Carpenter movie. We mentioned The Fogger. That movie was literally made for $1 million and made over 20. And if you make a movie for $1 million, everyone's happy if you make 20. You don't have to compete with Marvel. If you make a $19 million profit, that's great. So that's my little soapbox moment. Thank you for indulging me, all.
I love that.
Well received. There's a lot to be said about the horror genre. It's almost like the Rocky of movie genres. There's just so much they need to prove. They can do so much with so little, and they're still not appreciated. I think we're appreciating horror movies a little bit more.
I think we are.
The A24s, I think, are a testament to, like, you all need to start paying attention to this genre.
Right.
It's not all Friday the 13th, though it had its moments, especially the first one. But the A24 horror movies are showing people what this genre can be capable of.
That's true.
And it needs to be taken seriously, and they're it's pretty cool.
It is. And I just want on this note, soap operas, real quick, wrap up with some of this about practical effects. Like there's really a bizarre thing that I think people our age and younger have of just assuming newer is better because the effects are better. That is rarely true with movies. The effects are often worse and they're more expensive, and it looks shittier. So
there's too much uncanny valley with CGI and horror.
Exactly.
Way too much.
It rarely works. It's a lot more expensive.
And I'm gonna I'm gonna harp on the scope of it all too, because like CGI it's very, very hard to get the scope of horror going on, or this creature, whatever it may be. And this is what I was struck by in the thing is that how tangible, like you can just feel the essence of it and how biological everything feels, all that stuff. Like it's just there's no contest.
Well, there's no contest. This movie used matte paintings several times when they go to find where like the alien spacecraft was. That was a matte painting and it looked great.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's
right. Well, I don't know about this movie, but for Escape from New York, James Cameron did the matte paintings for a lot of that. Before he was a director, he did matte paintings, and kind of wish he went back to that, but that's another episode. So just like that's the thing, that is one of the oldest techniques that you would think everyone would see right through. It looks great.
It does.
It looks really fun. It adds a strange, surreal thing. And it's a hell of a lot cheaper than CGI.
Right.
And there's unions for matte painting people, not CGI people. Okay, we've kept you here a while, Jim, but I think we're going to transition into our recommendations, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Right. Starting with the guest, of course.
Please.
Yeah, I have a recommendation that will turn into a non-recommendation. In fact, I may talk you out of watching this thing by the time I'm done. It's a show called Outer Range. It's an Amazon original. You guys heard of it?
I'm really glad to talk to somebody who's seen this, because it seems like a thing I would like, but I have gotten such confusing things trying to read reviews.
You haven't seen it yet.
I have not seen it yet.
I have not seen it either.
And Megan, I know you're not a huge sci-fi person, but you're a soldier.
We're getting
you're going through it. You're doing great.
I'm dipping my toes.
Well, probably not this one. Outer Range is a pure sci-fi Amazon original TV series. I think it's 8 episodes long. They're about 45 minutes each, I think. And Josh Brolin is the Stark. I like him. I like watching him and stuff. And the premise of this show is that this guy, Josh Brolin's character, is a ranch owner. And he uncovers this gigantic hole on his vast property. He has no idea what it is about. And all the while, there is this drama of his family is feuding against another family. And one of his kids accidentally murders a kid from this feuding family. So there's this bedrock of this drama. And I'm breaking any spoilers by saying that they hide. It's probably the most spoilery thing I'll say about the show is that they hide the body in the hole. And what happens for the rest of the show is one of the kookiest, strangest, weirdest shows I've ever seen. I like it and I hate it at the same time. I recommend that you all take my non-recommendation and maybe just don't listen to me and watch it. It's infuriating and it's amazing at the same time. It's one of those shows that does this thing that I really hate it when movies and shows do this, where they try to be artsy. And so they think, oh, how do we be artsy? Well, let's have our characters do these strange montages where there's music and they're dancing naked in a room. I think people will see that and they'll think, yeah, there's some real art going on in this show here. But really, at the end of the day, you're just having Will Patton dance naked in a room. And when it's done, you're like, yeah, cool. So on to this next scene with the hole. It's, and the movie does that over and over and over again. It's just like, there are ways to be artsy and there are ways to annoy. And I think this show tries to annoy me more than it intrigues me. But the hole, Seth, keep your eye on the hole, because keep your eye on it, because that pulls you. It keeps you going. And there's enough intrigue there, I think, to keep things interesting. So that's my recommendation: is reluctantly watch Outer Range, be annoyed with the dancing naked people, but be intrigued by the hole.
Always.
That's my story.
This sounds great. I'm fully in. This sounds like something Anne would be into as well.
It's cool. There's enough mystery. There's mystery box in there.
I remember a friend telling me that they're getting into Terrence Malick movies and they were enjoying it, but getting really pissed off at all the long dancing scenes. And I watched
he's another one of those guys.
It's another. I appreciate his art, but he's also someone who, like, I just know how he's treated actors, and he's not like a monster of actors like Kubrick, but he's also like, you're gonna record a monologue for 40 minutes and it's not gonna be in a movie.
Right.
And I'm not going to tell you what's on the movie. Like Adrian Brody thought he was the star of Thin Red Line, showed up on the red carpet, and I was like, "Why are you here?"
You're not in the movie.
He has 2 scenes in the movie, but when they cast it, directed it, in the
I'm not
editing,
sure who is the
Jim
star
Caviezel,
of that movie.
I didn't care for it. I'll just say that's maybe one of my hottest takes, is that I didn't care for the Thin Red Line, but I like Tree of Life. So that's quite a ramble. But anyways, I think there is a thing of people going to film school and learning about Terrence Malick and thinking, let's add art scenes with Jalen's dancing scenes.
Let's be artsy.
Yeah. Megan, what is your recommendation?
I'll go in the spirit of TV as well. So I wanted to do a in spirit of both TV and spooky season, a very fun. It kind of reminded me of The Thing in terms of practical effects and stuff, but hear me out, guys. So I really wanted to recommend R.L. Stein's the Goosebumps series.
Right. Yeah.
So I was struck by they use some CGI, but they use practical effects as well, and like fun, very Halloween-y specific, like mask, costumes, all the good stuff, candy, just decor. That all looks great to me. And also I was really struck, which we've talked about too, this isn't with The Thing, it's not just like gross out monster movie. There's a little bit of like heart or character behind it. And I think that something that I was really struck by when I rewatched a recent episode of R.L. Stine was of Goosebumps was how it was like comically deep, like, and it's about the one I watched. I wish I could remember the name. It was I just remember the girl's name was Carly Beth, which was like cracking me up, the main character. And her thing is that she puts on a Halloween mask and it gets stuck, like she can't get it off. And she becomes like a monster of a girl, like a young girl, because she's like mean to her friend and stuff like that. And it was like I said, it was comically deep. And she goes back to the mask maker and he's like, it's because you're not kind to your friends and something like that. And I was just like, wow,
serves you right.
Yeah. And I think yeah, exactly. I think every episode will have a message like that kind of, but I was just like, we were like laughing, me and my partner watched it. We were like laughing at how morally high you had to be in
not
in
the
Goosebumps.
effect you want.
Yes.
You're laughing for the wrong reason.
Yes, it's true, but it was very fun, very Halloween-y, I would say. So if you're in that mood, and also the effects are fun. They're kind of like spooky, like they're spookier than I remember. So I really liked it.
Very cool. I'll have to check that out. Being homeschooled, Goosebumps was one of those things I didn't know existed till I was in my 20s, but I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Very cool.
When you were educated in the mountains.
Exactly.
Yes.
My dad actually was. That's a
isolated from society.
We are historically mountain folk. So my recommendation is going to be The Haunting from 1963, directed by Robert Wise. This was a movie I've been meaning to watch for a long time. This is the first adaptation of Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. And holy shit, this movie was great. This was a movie. Martin Scorsese actually calls this the scariest movie he's ever seen. This was number one on his list of, I think, 10 or 11 scariest movies. And this is a haunted house movie. This is a man, an anthropologist who's trying to prove the supernatural exists, is going to have people in the haunted house. You never see the monster, you never see the ghost, but holy shit, going back to effects, the sound, like so much of this movie is just women hearing insane, horrible, loud sounds happening right out their door. And nobody else hears it, even though the other people in the house. This is such a bizarrely loud sound. So you definitely have ghosts at work, and the ghosts seem pretty clever. One of the most frightening scenes is they're just looking at a door, and the door starts to like bow out very drastically. The bow seems to be moving, and you never see a ghost, you never see a monster. There's not a drop of blood in this movie. It's horrifying. It's great. I loved it. Highly recommend it. It really, and I'm into ghosts. I'm into haunted house movies and stuff like that. But like this really worked for me. And I have not read Shirley Jackson's book. I understand this is I don't know how faithful of an adaptation it is in terms of character, but I think the actual overall theme is definitely there. But that's another great horror movie that really holds up. And
what movie like really almost got me out of liking horror movies was the remake they did,
the 99 one.
it was in 99. I thought it was early 2000s, but I watched that and I was just thinking to myself, what am I doing?
This is
why
the
do
one
I
with
even
like Owen Wilson and
why
like
do I even
Liam Neeson, right?
No, that was a different one. This was Jeffrey Rush was in it.
Oh, I don't know this one.
Famke James.
That's a lot of
I can't. It was. It was. Yeah, I know. It was a remake of House on Haunted Hill.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. I gotcha.
And I watched that, and I just was questioning my life. It's like, what are we doing? Is this really what we've gotten to?
No more movies for me.
I think I wanted to give up on movies. I just wanted to live in the mountains with Seth's family and make butter and just never see people again. Just that's such a disappointing movie. Anyways,
wow, that's one of the fun things in watching. And I think my wife and I did it back to back, like night to night. We watched The Thing like 2 nights ago, and then we watched The Haunting last night. I think we've already talked about this. We're both big Mystery Science Theater fans and riff tracks. Like we've seen a lot of really bad horror movies via that, and it's like, man, like this, especially both The Haunting is a pretty cheap movie. There's no there's great sound design, but there's no big effects budget for this movie, and it's horrifying in a way that hundreds of movies are not. Like there's so many bad horror movies, and I can understand that's overwhelming if you're trying to get into it, but it's never been easier to find the good ones. It's never been easier to find a good horror movie. But like just because it's old and people, even if there's a good actor in it, doesn't mean it's going to be great. But man, this one was just like, it was so well directed. It was so creepy. The sound was so perfect.
Horror movies can be great with a curated guide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, going back to being really profitable, there's a lot of people who that's their plan is let's just make a cheap horror movie and rake in the dough if it's not good.
Even if you make just 20 million, it's still a profitable, a profitable shot in the arm.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, folks, I think we've come to the end of this
episode. Come to the end.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was
so cool.
You and I've talked about for a while. I'm really happy to have you on here.
Man, I love doing this with you too, man. I hope you invite me back and we'll talk about
absolutely.
We'll talk about something.
I think we're definitely gonna have you back. I really appreciate you joining us, Jim.
This was so cool.
Thank you. All right, folks. Well, that's it for this episode.
See ya.
Subscribe, give us that 5-star, and see ya.
That's right. Happy spooky season.
Happy spooky season.